This video is sponsored by Verve. Get a limited 30-day free trial of ad-free viewing of 8 great channels by clicking the link in the description below. Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. Now, I know I usually cover culture and gaming, but sometimes there's just that one anime that I find that just makes me absolutely go, holy cow, I didn't even realize, when it comes to the culture behind it. Now, most of the time these are one-to-one connections, like Jiraiya of Naruto versus the actual folklore character. But sometimes it can take an entire series for it to click in my head, and for me, last summer, that was My Hero Academia.
Dude, did somebody say My Hero Academia? Don't even get me started, my boy. My shonen senses are just tingling with excitement already.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Joey the Anime Man.
Wait, who is this guy?
Well, he does cultural analysis on anime over on his channel.
So basically what you do, only he's prettier.
With a topic this deep, I figured I could use a little extra help on this one.
How's it going, everyone? And apologies for the weird shonen tingles I just had.
Don't worry about it, man. I love this show too. No moe tropes, not a lot of fan service. It's just a well-written show with well-written characters and some of the best animation I've ever seen in my life. This was the show responsible for me getting back into anime, and there hasn't been a single episode that's let me down yet.
So what about My Hero Academia has you all fired up culturally? Is it the fact that all Might's attacks are named after American states? Or is it that combined with the rising popularity and the concept of Western superheroes a la this show and other shows like One Punch Man?
Believe it or not, it's a lot more general than that. But in order to get some of those less familiar with the series up to speed, perhaps a quick synopsis would be in order. You want to take this one, buddy?
I got you, bro. My Hero Academia follows the story of Deku, a young boy who dreams to be the greatest hero ever, chasing the back of the greatest superhero to ever live, the all-powerful All Might. In this world, people are born with special abilities called quirks. While a large majority of the world's population have these quirks, some unfortunate ones are born without such powers, our main character Deku being one of such. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, My Hero Academia pretty much presents what the world would be like if everybody who lived in it was basically a Marvel mutant. Some people have really simple abilities like limited telekinesis, while some have more insane capabilities like super strength. Or what about the ability to grow or shrink in size? Or even as far as to create miniature black holes inside of their bodies. It's nuts!
Basically, the world of My Hero Academia is one where everyone is unique and special. Not only is everyone distinct in their abilities, but also in their appearance or lack thereof. Heck, even characters with near identical abilities still have their own unique way of using those powers. But this gave me a huge amount of pause because about 2/3 into the first season, I realized something. This is a shonen anime, an ultra popular one at that, where everyone looks different, acts different, and has their own self-fulfilling goals, in a society that puts the group so far ahead of the individual, people actually have died from it. That's not meant to be an insult against Japan personally, I'm just saying I find it incredibly interesting that there is a massive growing popularity in an anime about how everyone is different and out for their own aspirations. I mean, sure everyone works together in the anime, but they do so to reach their own personal goals.
Exactly, we even talked about this over on my channel where we discussed the different discrepancies between anime high schools and real life high schools. Anything from the school rules to different clothing standards to social structures and everything else. I've always found it interesting though how a show like this would become popular in a society that is otherwise very group mentality focused. But maybe with this, that social structure is starting to change. As more Japanese people get frustrated with the current lifestyle of the Japanese human, they're starting to see and chase their own objectives. Women are starting to take work over marriage and having kids, while men are kind of sick of all the I need to work and I need to raise my family kind of attitude and just going about their daily lives as if none of that ever existed. I even argue that these factors may be the main culprit as to why Japan is having their population crisis right now.
I mean, it's entirely possible that the popularity of My Hero Academia could stem from a society so rigorously focused on group that people just want to do their own thing now. But you know, I think there's something even more revolutionary going on here that's complementing the focus on individual abilities and goals. Something I think kids in Japan and even abroad who watch and read this are getting exposed to that's critical to achieve personal success, especially in this day and age.
And what's that exactly?
Risk and reward. It's not something that's often talked about because in the past it's left a lot of bad taste in people's mouths. And for as much as I love Japan, and I do love Japan, I do think this is a massive problem. In my 12 years of education and experience with Japan, I've found that Japan just doesn't like to take risks. Like, ever. From business to education, Kids and adults alike are often pressured socially to never take a risk on the semi-unknown, and oftentimes will only act if they are certain that they are 100% right or a business deal will 100% benefit them. And I can understand the logic behind that kind of care, but in an economy that's been stagnating for well over a decade now, new ideas and products require risk to succeed. Any successful entrepreneur can tell you that. Speaking from an educational perspective, the lack of the ability to take risks had fundamentally hampered my ability to teach my kids when I was overseas. No joke, I could walk into the classroom the first day after a summer or winter break and ask, "Hey everyone, what did you do over your break?" No one would raise their hand or answer, not even for a question that had no real right answer. And when it came to actual schoolwork itself, I eventually had to break the kids up into smaller groups so that they could designate a spokesman, a thinker, so on and so forth. If left to their own devices on an individual basis, only a handful of kids would ever raise their hand to attempt to answer a question or solve a problem. And I was lucky to even get that. Most of the time, no one would answer and I would have to solve it for them. And my kids weren't stupid, they knew the answer. I knew they knew the answer. But they were so nervous about being wrong that they would not take that risk.
As someone who is living in Japan right now and has and is going to be working more with all sorts of different Japanese companies directly, I can speak about this from a personal level as well. The reason why a lot of Japanese companies are falling behind in terms of working with YouTubers or working in a more online and digital business model is because a lot of Japanese companies, especially that I find, are very scared to venture into unknown territories unless they're 100% certain that whatever risk they are about to take is going to give them some kind of reward. I mean, I can even argue that it's not so much a risk if you're not even going to be bothered to take it unless you know for certain that you're going to get a reward, but you get my point. It's always hard, at least for me, to try and convince different Japanese companies to work with me because I have to usually explain from the beginning as to what exactly it is that I even do. This especially applies to the very niche culture of anime that I'm a part of, but it also applies to much larger stuff like gaming and movies and even our own government. Not to mention, as a result of this change, Japan as a culture is actually slowly starting to change. Stagnation of economy due to lack of new products, companies no longer providing permanent work for employees, and the ever-logging problems of the overworking culture of karoshi, which Gaijin and I actually discussed even further in a different collab video we did in the past.
But My Hero Academia, for the first time it seems, is creating a scenario where kids in Japanese high school are constantly taking risks over and over and over again in order to achieve their own goals, sometimes doing it blindly. And series main protag Izuku Deku Midoriya is a shining example of this. Born without a power, he was actually given one by the #1 hero in the world, All Might, but he struggles to master it. And due to the self-destructive nature of his handicap, Deku constantly has to take high-stakes risks in hopes of yielding greater reward in victory or saving others. And you can see this in literally every single arc of the series. In episode 4, as Deku participates in the practical hero entrance exams to get into UA, he quickly falls behind as he cannot control his quirk while everyone else is easily fighting robot villains. But things get really serious when the school staff unleashes a massive bot to attack the students, who pretty much all turn tail and run. Except one, Deku, who noticed his newly established friend Ochako Uraraka was trapped. Even though on the surface he believed himself to be unable to do anything, by taking a risk without hesitation against a literal colossal problem, he found a way, even though he ended up injuring himself in the process. If he had held back to assess the situation, or worse, thought to himself, "Shogunai, I can't do anything about it," it would have likely have been too late to save Ochako. The risk of action had the reward of accomplishment. Now, this isn't to say that Deku isn't without assessment and planning. I mean, good lord, the guy has a notebook on every other hero in existence, constantly internally analyzes every situation he's in, and does create plans before action. But a lot of the time, they're unconventional and incredibly risky plans. Heck, when the UA students fall into the villain Tomura Shigaraki's trap, it took an improv plan, more self-harm, and an on-the-fly response from his friends to foil the villains trying to kill them. But Deku's risk assessment into reward motif solidifies even greater as the series continues. Episode 16, during the sports festival, Deku finds himself behind again during the obstacle course and can't use his power so early as it might break his body. So he has to figure out something else to try. So get this, Deku uses a piece of armor scrap to take out an oncoming robot, then when faced with an expansive minefield uses it to dig up mines into a pile, then self-detonates on top of them, propelling himself over the minefield in hopes of being blasted in front of everyone else. He didn't know if it would blast him the right way. Heck, I don't even think he knew if he was going to survive the ordeal. But he did, and he won. It's that kind of critical thinking and risk assessment that propels people into success. If Deku didn't take the chance of possibly blowing himself to bits, he wouldn't have succeeded. Heck, he'd probably have walked in last place. While everyone was sure of what they could do based on their own powers and abilities, they limited themselves. Deku, on the other hand, had to try something different, and it put him in first place.
Hey, but don't let Deku's accomplishments overshadow all the others. A bunch of the other supporting casts also took their risks to gain their own rewards. In episode 17, you see Class B throwing the prelims to get intel. In episode 21, Hudson and May throws in order to show off to investors. And in episode 22 and 23, everyone is desperate to reach their own goal and risking it all to make it happen. As you can see, this risk and reward mentality is shown in all corners of the series.
But risk is called risk because it doesn't always work out. There is always something you can lose. And My Hero Academia expresses that as clearly as how risk can yield great reward. During the cavalry race, despite Deku's risky plan to break his opponent's defense and reclaim his headband worth 10 million points, he grabbed the wrong one, only giving him 70. He risked, but lost. And later on, the hardest defeat Deku suffered due to his risky behavior came from his match against the child prodigy known as Shoto Todoroki. Deku had no plan to overtake Todoroki's constant barrage of ice. Instead, he gave everything he had in his power, broken limbs and all, in an attempt to overpower Todoroki. But in the end, it was Todoroki who came out on top. And Deku's reckless attempts scarred him for life.
But that also isn't to say that loss doesn't come without benefit. I mean, Deku helped Todoroki remember his past and remind himself to pursue independence from his father's powers. He frees himself from self-repression and moves towards self-improvement and individuality.
Well, either way, I'm incredibly curious to see where the series is going to go and how it may impact high schoolers who are watching it. With all these characters focused on themselves and taking huge risks to achieve their goals, I wonder if the next generation of workers in Japan will take on the mantle of risk takers and push themselves to create their own life. After 2 decades of economical stagnation, a drop in full-time employment, and many people beginning to focus on their own projects, I think we may very well see an industrial boom when it comes to entrepreneurs and those willing to take bigger economic and sociological risks to reap the rewards that come with them. And if you want to check out My Hero Academia for yourself, you can actually watch it stream through Verve. For those of you that have never heard of it, Verve is a new online streaming provider that houses a ton of different channels, including Crunchyroll, Funimation, Rooster Teeth, Mondo, and a bunch more, with shows like Cyanide Happiness, Harmon Quest, Ruby, and Last Man, all of which you can watch right now. I mean, I picked up Verve for the combination of Crunchyroll and Funimation alone, but coming back to classics like Cyanide Happiness and discovering new shows like Last Man have been a phenomenal experience. But why take my word for it? You can get a limited free trial by clicking the link in the description to get all of this great programming ad-free for 30 days on all of your favorite devices. Even when the trial is up, you're still getting a $32 value for less than $10 a month. And that subscription goes to help keep shows funded as well. So go check them out.
But hey, like we mentioned before over on my channel, Gaijin and I did a video where we compare and contrast the different discrepancies between anime high schools and Japanese high schools. So if you'd like to check that out, click that link in the description below, and don't forget to sub to my channel for more anime and otaku related content.
And you can also find a ton of culture and anime analysis here on my channel as well. But go check out our video over on Joey's channel. It was a ton of fun to put together and I think you guys will absolutely love it. But as always, until next time everyone, this is Gaijin Goombah signing out.